Welcome back. Like I said before the break, we have a host of issues to deal with, and now we're at the final topic of the day, which is the issue of democracy in West Africa. We'll be taking a look at what happened recently or what's been happening, the issue of coups going on within the West African region, and what this means for the future for democracy, and how Nigeria's involvement could end up having an impact generally on democracy. I've been joined now in the studio by Sunday Jatu Esquire. He's a legal practitioner. He's just been asked to speak on the issue. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. And
it's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's start, with the basics. Democracy in West Africa. We're seeing sad news, I don't know if I should call it sad, because some persons are very pro unconstitutional way of taking over government. But that being said, what do you think is really going on, and what is the place of the law in all of this and democracy?
Okay, the truth is, democracy has been tested and is trusted, and amidst all the other means of governance, democracy is the best. But one asks the question, what is the cause for all these military overthrowing civilian rules in South Africa? If I get it correctly, I think there are about 5 countries currently that are being ruled by the military. We have Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, of course Niger, Chad, and Guinea. Now, and all these 5 countries, they are former French colonies. And one asks the question, why? If you really want to look at the history, let's start with when the colonial masters decided to divide Africa into colonies. That was in 1884-85. They call it the Benin Conference. And from there, France has about 14 colonies. And then in 1960, there was an outright cry for independence. A lot of African countries gained independence. But this independence did not just come for African countries. It came with a price. The UN resolution regarding the independence of African countries was signed. They have about 80-something countries that signed it. France did not sign it. Instead, France decided to bring what they called the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. And what does it have? It has about 11 agreements. The first is that all the countries that, of course, are the colonies of France would have to repay the infrastructure that the French colonies, France built in these countries rather. The second is that this country will have to deposit 85% of their resources into the French treasury, that is the central bank in France. They only are left with 15% to rule and govern the country. How practicable is that? Then they also have access to 20%, and this 20% is a loan which comes with an interest. The question is, how do you expect people, I mean the people in the country, living in the country, to be able to deal with just 50% of their resources? Don't forget, the major reason why democracy has been tested and trusted is because, of course, there is rule of law, there is equality, there is good governance, people enjoy the dividend of democracy. But most French countries, they don't. And what I mean by French countries are the French colonies. They don't enjoy it. And how do you expect them to enjoy it when they only have 15%? You have to be realistic. And that is why France influence in this country is the major reason for all these military coups, all these coup d'etats, all these outcries in French countries.
Right, I'm sorry to cut you short here. What you've described now, are you saying it persists to this day, or
of course
it wasn't ratified
till date? And that is why France, they don't want they want a leader that they can control. If you see if they see or they perceive that this one is a strong-minded person that wouldn't yield to their control, they remove him. We've seen so many cases.
Is there proof of this?
We've seen so many cases. We have Laurent, yes, Gbagba, if I got the name correctly, Laurent. We have, of course, Gaddafi. That's a very popular one in Libya. We have there's another one from Gambia. I can't remember the names now.
But are you saying there's no influence of, as they call it, the West in all of this? Because people tend to want to blame America, particularly for a lot of these issues. You are saying it's a French thing?
Well, of course, France is part of the West, you know, right? So, and if the major, we are the points here, or the major reason, or the major takeover of governance has been to the French colonies, and that is where the discussion comes in. United States, America, definitely they have influence over their colonies too, but not as grave as this as that of France over its colonies. And that is not all. Do you know that up till now, no French country has their own currency? They still use the CFA of France. They still deposit their resources into French country. They don't have control over their military. It is French. It is the French government. They can't buy equipment, the military equipment, unless French give it to them. All of these things. And the funniest thing is that they still have the right of first refusal whenever there is discovery of natural resources in this country. What does that mean? Before maybe they discover, okay, most of them have gold. Let's say they discover oil. And then before they can have control of that oil, they have to write to French and say, oh, we have discovered oil in our country. Do you want to take over or something? Or do you want to buy it? Or do you... It's until they say no, go ahead with it, before they can do anything. Aside from that, there's nothing they can do. How do you expect this country to rule?
You are describing sort of a pseudo-colonialism in the modern age.
It is neo-colonialism. That is just the simple way to call it. Neo-colonialism, and that is what is affecting, and that is what the military, they don't want. Look at Mali, look at Burkina Faso. They don't want any influence of these militaries, of this French in their country, and that is why you can see that Burkina Faso, Mali, of course, they don't pay all these resources again into the French government, into their account, the treasury account. They don't do that again, and that is why. And one thing, this is global politics. Let's just put it that way. International politics beyond. Although when it comes to military coup, there are two factors that really determines it. The first two, they have internal and the external factor. The internal are the maybe the president seeking to renew his tenure unconstitutionally, maybe electoral fraud, and all of this. These are internal. But when it comes to external, this is when the colonial masters comes in, because they still have control over their territory, over their colonies. And how do you expect a country to rule its people, provide all the amenities for them with just 15%?
Well, let me put it this way. What you've described now is that what we're seeing is sort of a response to this.
It's sort of a response.
So the question now is, because you started this by saying democracy is the best form of government.
Of course.
So the question is, let us assume, hypothetically speaking, these states all return to democratic rule. The question is, what can be done democratically to remedy this situation so that the military doesn't feel that they need to take over and do things themselves?
Not like I said, there are treaties signed, and once it is a treaty is signed, you are expected to abide by them. To get it, and the reason why the military is controlling all of the should I say bypassing this, is because when they enter, they suspend the constitution. They don't rule by the constitution, rather they rule by decree. Because so the constitution, every other rule, international treaties and all, they are basically suspended. You get it? That is why they have control, and they could say, okay, we are not giving you, we are not remitting our money into your resources, into your treasury, and we can go and do that. But the truth is, it will be very difficult for a democratic government to reject this. It will really be very, very difficult. We have instances where a democratic government will want to, but of course, French government comes in again, and then, you know, these people, they will not tell you that, okay, we are invading your privacy, we invading your country, we are doing this, we are influencing your country. They won't directly. They have people they use, they have machinery they use, they have structures put in place when things like this happen that they can actually intervene. Do you get my point? Now, it is very, very difficult for a democratic rule to be able to control these things. UN will have to be involved. And you know, when it comes to UN, of course, that is another ball game entirely. International politics at its peak. International politics was at its peak. So it will be very, very difficult for a democratic rule to be able to, you know, maneuver all of these things. And that is why even in Togo, if I remember the year correctly, there was this president that really wanted, that said, okay, I am not giving French government a dime out of our money. What happened? There was a French-funded military coup that overthrew that particular government, and this man, I can't remember the name of this man, that died in 2015, overthrew the government and took control until, and it, of course, was restored as the civilian rule. It took control as a military this thing, and then restored as a civilian rule, and ruled the country for about how many years. And that is why in most of these French countries, you hear people ruling for 20 years, ruling till they die, ruling, and then their son take over. Is because of this influence. And the only way, see, the truth is, Africa need to work together. All the African countries, they need to work together. You should be able to, if they work together, have one voice, then I believe that they can fight this particular war. Let us have another round table. We are not comfortable with 85% of our resources deposited into your account, and then we are left with 15% and 20% as a loan, and we have to pay with interest. Let us have a round table. Let us settle this. Let us say, oh, okay, fine, you still want to have control over us. Yes, okay, fine. But this is to the extent that you can control us. Leave us alone. Let us control ourselves. Maybe there will be another treaty. Do you get it? Of course, we honor you as our colonial master, as our former colonial master, although you are still controlling us, but not to the extent of having military presence in our country, not to the extent of we not having. Now that reminds me of these African countries. They've actually tried to ravage this particular situation. In November 2019, there was a group of African countries that came together and said, okay, we want to have our currency. They call it ECO. They get it as ECOWAS from the ECO. But what happened? And they wanted to have the central bank where the depositors will be in Senegal. But what happened? The French came in and they scattered the whole thing.
All right, we've been talking about French a lot, and I mentioned the United States. But let's talk about one that is confirmed to an extent in this Niger coup. It's believed that the Wagner group or the Wagner forces are currently in Niger. So when you speak about French, this Russian involvement, what do you perceive? Is this a tussle for the soul of the nation? What's really going on? You know, it's about. I think it's people saying if you can't beat them, you join them. Let me just put it that way. You discover that when there was the government of Burkina Faso and Mali was overthrown,
there was no military intervention from the from ECOWAS. And why? It's not because ECOWAS doesn't have the capacity. Of course, ECOWAS does to get it, but their external influence over this particular thing, Russia. And this recent summit, they call it Saint Petersburg or something summit, something summit that just came in, where Russia, Putin decided to give or forgive African countries about billions of dollars as debt owed to them. Why do you think all of this is coming in? Like I said, this is an international politics. We all know that the West is in war against Russia and its allies. And when it comes to allies, of course, we have China and others. You get it, that are supporting Russia. France is part of the West. Wherever France decides to go, most of this West will follow them. No doubt, I'm not supporting military rule. I started off with democracies have been tested and have been trusted. Do you get it? But how do you expect people or the country to enjoy the dividend of democracy when there's so much internal influence? Talking about the Wagwan forces, ECOWAS gave a 7 days ultimatum for them to return to civilian rule, which passed on Sunday. To get it? Now, Niger doesn't have the military capacity to face ECOWAS. It doesn't. That's the truth. They need external force. That is Russia coming in. And we know that UK, UN, United States, they are all in support of ECOWAS. In fact, they are saying that everything, they are in support of ECOWAS 100%. Do you get it? So if ECOWAS invade today, they have the backing of Russia, of United States and all. But Niger also need the backing of an international country, which is Russia. And you all know that when it comes to international policies, Russia is like this, West is like this. Of course, we can see that in the Ukraine war.
All right, so we've almost run out of time now. What I really want to get now is Nigeria's involvement in all of this. This is a neighboring country. People are wondering, what should Nigeria do? What should we do? Some people say Nigeria should have military intervention. We saw the president write to the Senate seeking that approval, which he didn't get, apparently. But the question is, how do you think Nigeria should consider this issue? People say if there is a military rule right next door to us, it sends the wrong message, it gives the wrong ideas, and so on and so forth. Others say, just stay back. We have issues of our own. We have insurgency. We have terrorism. That's not our business. What do you think Nigeria's stance towards this should be?
Okay, I get your point. Well, the truth is, I get your question rather, but the truth is, no matter how many problems we face as a national country, as like internally, we still have responsibility at the international level. United States has its problems, but they still have to contribute internationally. That is international politics. It is allowed. It is required. But now on the Nigerian involvement in Niger, of course, President Tinubu is the chairman of ECOWAS. And then, aside from him being the chairman of ECOWAS, Nigeria I won't say own, but Nigeria is about roughly over 50% when it comes to ECOWAS, the funding and everything. Nigeria is the largest country. So ECOWAS is more like Nigeria. Do you understand? Do you get my point? So it is now on Tinubu to make the right choice, the right decision. But really, military intervention is not really the right one. Although his report is this thing to the Senate is not really asking them for permission. It was asking them, what is your take on all of these things? Do you get me? It's not asking them that, okay, we want to invade. And by the way, before Nigeria can actually invade, we have to get approval from Senate according to Section 5 sub 4 of the 1999 Constitution. And the truth also is that before ECOWAS itself can now invade, they also have to get an approval from UN according to Article 53 or 51 of the UN Charter. Do you get it? So Senate has not given approval yet. UN has not given approval yet, and there's no way ECOWAS can invade Niger legally without those approvals. Do you get my point? And if peradventure Nigeria, ECOWAS invades Niger, of course, Nigeria is the chairman, is like the head of ECOWAS. In fact, the headquarters of ECOWAS is in Abuja here. Do you get it? Definitely, it's more like Niger war against Nigeria war. And we all know how close Niger and Nigeria is. We all know how close these countries are. All
right, I'm so sorry. We've run out of time now, Mr. Jatsu. It's been great the way you broke it down. And I hope we can have a longer period where we really go deeper into specific issues. But so far, this is a good breakdown and a good starter into the issue. Thank you so much for coming today. All right, that's all we can take on the program. We had discussions on the state of the nation, on Kano state politics, on the APC leadership tussle, and finally we've just spoken on the issue of the Niger coup aftermath and Nigeria's involvement in forestalling or returning democracy to West African countries. Don't forget, the POLITY reaches you live from Abuja, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. every weekday. See you tomorrow. Bye for now. I am Amadine Oberi.